Bonnie County, everyone. This is Professor Rahh, Professor Emeritus, California State University of Long Beach, former city councilman for the city of Compton, former Compton College Board of Trustees, and former Compton Unified School District Board of Trustees. We want to welcome you to the Conscious Corner by way of Community Education Network that was put together by Brother Rashaki Maskani, formerly Regal Moore, and along with and we thank him immensely for his fortitude and commitment to this program. Also, a part of this is my co-host, but he's been under the weather a little, and that's Brother Joe Hembrick. He may join us later. I want to also welcome Brother Mshinda out of Louisiana, who's longtime community activist and longtime community servant in that area, and grew up in the Los Angeles area. And we want to thank him for being such a devoted and dedicated panelist that we discuss critical issues facing Black people. Again, welcome. You found your family in a peaceful place, and we wish all of you blessings without numbers and all good things without end, as we say in Kawaii. Kawi is the philosophy, the best of African thought and practices, and ongoing synthesis with a sensibility toward uh, uh, constant exchange with the world. In other words, we make progressive corrections as we find other evidence of excellence and productivity and frontline progress for the liberation of our people from the standpoint of mental, cultural, and physical liberation out of the 60s. All right, so we're going to get started. Tonight we're going to discuss a very important person in our history. We didn't get a chance to do it right after his birthday on the 15th. It was a Monday. Our show was on a Tuesday, but we had already had a guest. But we need to talk about Martin Luther King and his contribution and what people really know. And what are some of the main aspects of his contribution, and what he would be how would he, if he was still living, even though he'd be in the 90s and things. We recognize the loss of his son, Dexter, who got his name from the first church that Martin Luther King preached in as a minister, and he named his son, his second son, after that church. But anyway, we're going to get into that a little later. I just want to go on and just discuss what Martin Luther King meant, or what you thought he meant to the people and what he meant to you. We're going to start with Brother Mshinda. Mshinda, you're in the South. Martin Luther King created the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. I don't know, if you ever dealt with people that dealt with King, but what is your position on Martin Luther King as far as his contribution, and how do you see him as a minister and as an individual, and how would you grade him as far as, from your perspective, as far as his contribution to the civil rights movement?
Well, good evening. Well, I grew up, in that era when, I mean, he was active probably before I was born. But at the end of the day, during those civil rights movements and, marches and things like that, I grew up right in the midst of that as a young kid. My dad had me involved in the understanding, and had us very conscious at an early age. And so Martin Luther King, of course, listening to his, I got original album of "I Have a Dream" speech and all that. Listening when it was first recorded and put out, still have that probably at the house and in the CPT. But at the end of the day, I think Martin Luther King is still underrated, in the world, because of the opposition that he faced in his lifetime, his short lifetime. People focus on the aftermath. He was assassinated, and so forth. And some of the things he stood for, some of the, the unity and the ideals that he brought to people. But Martin Luther King, you know, that you always got the debate of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and growing up, I think we choose sides. Oh, I'm down with Malcolm. Malcolm is, he believed in this, and Martin believed in that. But as I got older and started trying to read about Martin Luther King, we read about him and hear about him, but when you get older, you should get wiser. You should. Most people, a lot of people don't. And I'd like to, I'm the type that will go and reread something and re-listen to things. And Martin Luther King, he's still part of my research right now. I'm not going to be some person that says I'm an expert in Martin Luther King, but his readings, his books, his different things that he come up with, the dude is like off the charts, very deep. His letters from the jail and just the speeches, listening to it as a more mature adult. I challenge any person that grew up in the 60s and 70s and 80s to go back and listen, now as a mature adult. And it would take your mind frame to a whole nother level, all the, you can call it dogma, as far as, they infuse in the religion or something like that. But it's way past all that. It's about humanity. It's about survival. It's about freedom and justice, for people, and so I just like to just commemorate and not only that, challenge others to really give a critical analysis of his work, and like I say, I'm still in progress with that. It's so much work. It's a big body of work in a short life. He didn't make it out his 30s, and his body of work is unbelievable. And so um, you know, that's all I could say. I know my dad, he was a registered pallbearer, during his funeral. It's something that I cherish, and you go into the international wing of the Atlanta airport. He's up there with the funeral procession and things like that. I don't say that from a braggadocious standpoint, is that, I commend his involvement and instilling in me the righteousness that he got out of it. And so therefore making me the man of who I am. And, of course, there are other scholars and people that have influenced me, but Martin Luther King, in the hood terms, was a major beast, you know. So that's all I have to say right now.
Well, first of all, you should brag about your father being a registered pallbearer for Martin Luther King, and you should, get that picture and honor it, because that's it illustrates your long history of being aware through your father of the civil rights movement, and your father activism that he was so honored that they named him to be one of the registered pallbearers. That's big, and it's not really bragging. It's just letting people know that your father was a very instrumental person in the civil rights movement, that and a part of the civil rights movement, and standing up in times of peril where dogs were being sicked on them, and water holes and electric prods were being sicked on them, and assassination attempts and bombings and killings that was going on. Many people run for cover, but so your father stood out. They wouldn't even put him on if he wasn't essential as a registered pallbearer. So I think that's good. Second, but when you say Martin Luther King don't get his props, what do you mean?
Well, we live in America.
Mm-hmm.
So if and I'm just thinking universally in America, we, when I say we,
Mm-hmm.
not me, but the majority and I don't have all the statistics, but I got a great sample of what I'm talking about in terms of what people do.
Mhm.
You know, I like to think I'm a social scientist paying attention to what we do as a people on a
Mhm.
daily basis. And my sample tells me that we rely on the media, the
Mhm.
mass media, and so forth. So it's kind of like Black History Month. You know, you get February comes in and you put all these pictures on the wall and you show all these movies and and that's great. Don't get me wrong, because we're commemorating, we're celebrating, we're putting out information. But a lot of people say, Black History Month is every day. Black History is every day of the week. Just like Kwanzaa. You said, hey, we trying to carry out these principles on a regular daily basis, and I hear other news medium that um looks at Kwanzaa that way. They still, every day they'll mention that today is, a unity day or such and such, that kind of thing. So what I'm saying is, um, so there are people, in America where we're at who are conscious, who understand what I'm talking about, who understands it better than I do as far as Martin Luther King, his writings, his inspirations, and things like that. You know, he's far, but I'm saying is, that when it's his birthday, they issued a holiday, so he's been killed, and they show, they do have a lot of civil rights depictions and things like that. But when I say underrated, I don't really think that our people, when I say, I mean the masses of the people, because we got to include the youth, we got to include the generations that are coming up now, and all the millennials and Gen X's and all these different ones. I'm not talking about the baby boomers, and some of them too as well, but I'm talking about what came after the baby boomers. I don't think they really understand the significance on another level. And that's what I meant by underrated. I don't think that he's not underrated, of course. I think that debate about Malcolm, Martin, and people like to compare and contrast. I think that diminishes the whole effect, because at the end of the day, you know, I think people want justice, want fairness, and all the other things that come with it. And I think that he's one of the world forefront guys that stuck his neck out there and took a bullet, regardless of the situation. He put his life on the line. So what
Mhm.
I'm saying is, I think we bring him up during January. We bring him up only in January. You don't talk about Martin Luther King year round, or we might talk about certain things that he might have been involved in. But what I'm saying is, you
Mhm.
know,
It's
that's
not.
what I mean. I
It's
think
not.
he,
It's not.
huh?
It's not a part of the Euro American mainstream presentation. Even though they have awards, the Martin Luther King Award, parades, and this and that.
Oh yeah,
But it's
January though.
yeah. Well, it's up to, well, okay. There's a why you think as revered as Martin Luther King is, many families don't incorporate his philosophy in their day-to-day life, such as nonviolence, such as educational excellence, such as, like you said, his example of activism and things of this nature, and give homage to him. And we don't say they killed him; we say he was a martyr. Killed him. Assassination is what they did, but martyrdom is what he did. In other words, him and Malcolm said, "I know I'm gonna be killed," when they met with each other. So
Right.
he knew that what he was doing, even in his I've been to the mountaintop speech, let you know that he knew that death was on the rise, and possibly, like he said, I want to live a long time. Longevity has its place. But the point is that we must put him in a martyrdom standpoint. Like they don't say Jesus committed suicide. They said he sacrificed himself, even though he could have said, hey, look, I ain't God's daddy. I just, let me down. He hold his position. Martin Luther King held his position and even expanded it from civil rights to world peace, hunger and war. But go ahead, Mshinda, you can respond.
Well, you said something about why, do people, in regards to, incorporating his beliefs or his what he stood for in their everyday lives. A lot of people are ignorant of the fact, you know. Um, it's kind of like if you use a church analogy, people say, they talk about Jesus and different things like that, the Christianity, but they don't read the Bible. They just, I believe this, I pray, and this such as, but people don't read. And it's a known fact that there's a illiteracy rate in our communities where a lot of people don't even know how to read or how to comprehend. You know, and so if you look at the educational levels of people, of course they're not. We're good listeners though. There's different learning styles where we can do an audio book, or we can that kind of thing. But as time goes on, the type of information that we're talking about that's available for to be disseminated to anybody, we're in competition with social media, to where there's a great divide. I mean, in other words, we're getting further and further away from the truth, from the understanding, because of the fact that, I think you spoke on it on previous podcasts where, we or someone has spoke on it, to where the availability of other beliefs are out there and accessible so readily and so easily that we can choose our own truths, and we can say, oh, this is what I believe in. I can believe in the blue moon, or whatever, that kind of thing. So I think that it's part of the infiltration. We use COINTELPRO as an example of, we can't, we have to depower people. We have to keep people at a certain level. They can't grow to this entity. That kind of thing. I was listening to, I don't know, I listen to stuff and read so much stuff, but everybody on the planet, kind of became in agreement at one time. We can like control anything, as far as big business. I think who was I listening to? Somebody was talking about like the 1% who controls the world. If everybody, the 99% say, you know what, this is what we're gonna do, but we're so divided as a human family that and we have subgroups, the black family, the Chinese family, or whoever. We're so divided, we're so segregated that and I so what I'm saying is, during this flight in time, the divide is growing even further, because of the fact that people have the ability to choose whatever they want to believe in, without even empirical evidence or rigorous analysis or anything like that. They're just on a whim. So that's why, yeah. So that, you back to that question about the family incorporating it into their everyday values, is because of the fact that they have other values, what they deem as values, or they may not even have access to certain, uh, say now these days, if you had the internet in your house, or if you can afford an audio book or whatever. I mean, a lot of people are trying to, eat. They have other issues, to where they're not into a serious debate about the world affairs or what's going on in the community. People are in survival mode. So it's kind of like trying to crack a hard shell nut, trying to crack that nut to get them to, hey, look over here, see this. It's
Mm.
very difficult. I think people have great intentions, and I think people's heart, they really want to be treated right, and they want to have love in their life. But the enemy is very much alive and keeping us at bay with violence and evilness and a lot of other things that are going on, man. We just had a 14-year-old get killed the other night. The 12-year-old was shot, 14-year-old was killed. When I was at the basketball game when it went down. That wasn't in the court, but it was outside the game. Somebody got killed. Now they arrested a few juvenile. I'm just saying, low level thinking, low level interaction, low level behavior. It's crazy. So I don't know. I'm just freestyling tonight.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. Brother Mshinda, I'm gonna come back to you, Mshinda. Just hold on for a minute.
Okay.
My brother Rashiki, what do you think about Martin Luther King? How do you see his birthday and celebrations and his contribution to our consciousness and our liberation and the civil rights movement?
Uh, he's extraordinary human being. He is a human being, and we can't say that much about people. Uh, Most people don't possess humanity, and he was one that was real close to that of
Mm-hmm.
of total humanity, and he was so brave, highly intelligent. I
Mm-hmm.
when I have students that are so exceptional, I say that they can see clear. They're not so disturbed where they make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And he was one of those type of people where you put him in a classroom and he would just shine, and just the purest of the purest heart. I love Martin Luther King quotes. I love them, and I want to share a few of them.
Okay.
So here's one. Love is the greatest force in the universe. It is the heartbeat of the moral cosmos. And Brother Henry talked about the cosmos. C.J.H. Moore talks about the cosmos. He
Mm-hmm.
who loves is a participant in the being of God. That's
Mm-hmm.
one. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education. I
Mm-hmm.
wholeheartedly agree with that. Change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle. And that's what Professor Rahh always talked about, continuous struggle. No man pull you so low as to hate him. I think that's really important. We allow people to get, I would say a great amount of us allow people to get under our skin and causes you to focus on that entity other than what you really should be focusing on is you and the work you should be doing and like the work we do here. So I think people need to focus more on self and their improvement, focus on other people and how they feel about them and how they do things. I tend to let people get under my skin, and that's a waste of your energy. So I think this is a real good quote right there. Well, all of them are. Just share a few more. True peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice. Make a career of humanity. Commit yourself to the noble struggle of equal rights. You will make a better person of yourself, a greater nation of your country, and a finer world to live in. This is like at the crux of what our platform is about. That's at the crux of it.
Mm-hmm.
self-improvement, and collective improvement. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Very important. What service are we providing for people? And how are we an asset to our community? So Professor Rahh, I'm gonna let you take over at this point. I have background noise. So go ahead and I'll come back to some of the more quotes.
Okay, then. Appreciate what you said, if I understand correctly. That's pretty good. You know, Mshinda made some good points about Martin Luther King and why many people haven't adopted his philosophies and his way of life or his vision for a new world and a new concept of civilization. You know, he was an integrationist. Martin Luther King wanted to integrate. You know, he talked about I dream in his. I had a dream. I dreamed one day a white girl and a black boy would walk hand in hand. You know, and all that. The civil rights movement was an integrationist movement. It was a Christian movement. It was a religious movement, a spiritual movement. Martin Luther King was a very unique orator and a very unique writer. But above all, he was a unique activist. He was deemed the most dangerous man in America by Edgar J. Hoover during the height of the civil rights movement. He was criticized and vilified by many Black preachers who worked in collaboration with white governments in the South and white establishments that were forced to denounce what he was doing and say and not participate. But he was able to galvanize one of the biggest religious movements for civil rights in the history of people in this country. A lot of people say he got it, the nonviolent philosophy from Gandhi, but if you read his memoirs and stuff, he really got it from his mother. People don't talk about his mother that much. You know, she was assassinated, murdered in the church also while she was and matter of fact, Martin Luther King daddy got his church at Ebenezer Baptist Church. He got that from King. Coretta's father was the minister, and then they hooked up, and that's how he got to be the minister when Coretta's father died. It's a lot to Martin Luther King when you go beyond just what the media writes, as Mshinda was saying. The COINTELPRO discouraged the study of King because when you study King, what you thought of him, you get a different view. As Rashiki was saying, and as Mshinda was saying, we don't read enough. But a lot of that is because as the destruction, well, not the destruction, but the suppression of and oppression of the Black family, the emphasis of what to read. We you know, parents send us to school and they don't even know what we're reading. They just want to see our grades in English, history. And all of this is European studies. You know, it's European studies, but as far as our parents being conscious enough to say, you know, I want you to read the autobiography of Malcolm X, the autobiography of Martin Luther King. I want you to really know about people that paid a price for us to be where we are. And that's what Mshinda was saying about the value, not the belittling, but the value, holding dear to Harriet Tubman, Fannie Lou Hamer, and historical personalities that were martyrs that gave their life so that we can live a more flourishing and fuller life. And Martin Luther King did that along with Reverend Abernathy, C.V. Williams, Reverend Shatterfield, and all the other ministers that joined with him in the movement. And you know, Martin Luther King was unique in many ways for young people. He was a role model to emulate. He was a straight A student. He was skipped in the 9th grade and in the 12th grade. Matter of fact, he in the college at 15, a special program through Morehouse. Now that right there is the model for excellence and the importance of study. So if parents, you want to even emphasize the importance of education, they could use his example of studying and being skipped and being a very serious student of knowledge. He was born Michael Lewis King, Michael Lewis King, and his daddy was Michael Lewis King. Martin Luther King was Michael Lewis King Jr. And then his father went to, they say both of them went, but some people say just his father went to Europe and Germany or wherever Martin Luther Church is, and came back and changed both of their names. And that's how he got the name Martin Luther King. But his name was Michael Lewis. And then his father changed his name. And then he changed his son's name, his oldest son's name. Now, that's very important because, people don't even know that, and they don't even think that's important. But he went through a transformation, a deep transformation with regards to spirituality and deciding that he wanted to be a minister. So he got his degrees in theology and things of this nature. But above all, his character. Martin Luther King didn't have to get involved in the civil rights movement. He had a car. He didn't need to ride the bus. He didn't have to do that. Him and Coretta, they called him down there to be the minister down there, and they needed a new voice, but he answered the call of history to take on that struggle for Rosa Parks and the church movement, the Montgomery movement, and he took on that. In the times in which there were other civil rights movements about the integrating buses and integrating, but the one that stands out in history is the one that Martin Luther King led. And that's because it lasted a year. Boycotts was a year of the buses. And it created an enormous amount of economic problems for those people because in those days, transportation was the bus. And for them not to ride the bus, many of the white women couldn't get their houses clean because most of the black women at that time were what you call domestic workers, and they were upset at their husbands and wanted to hurry up and get the boycott over with so that they can get them black women. Matter of fact, some of them went and picked up the sisters that was working for them and gave them a ride to their house to work. I'm not praising the white people that did it; they just want some work. But I'm just saying that that's how they affected it. And so when you look at Martin Luther King, you not only look at him as a preacher and a dreamer, as they like to portray him in Walmart and in Target and all that, and in the main media. They always want to talk about his "I Had a Dream" speech, but that was not the title of his speech when he gave that speech. The March on Washington was not about Martin Luther King coming up there to give a dream. They had other speakers, and they were talking about voting rights. They were talking about employment. They were talking about America wrote a bad check when they talk about justice, and when we come to cash it. And it was Mahalia Jackson that was behind Martin Luther King that told him, tell him about the dream. He was ending his speech, and she didn't feel that he had galvanized enough people, got him riled up enough, or inspired enough. And she said, Martin, tell him about the dream. Tell him about the dream. And that's why he ad-libbed it. The guy that got a copy of the notes of the speech, and he turned it over, I think, to the museum, is George Ravlin, who was a basketball coach for SC at one time. And he asked Martin Luther King after the speech, could I have your notes? And he had the notes, and nowhere on it was the title of the speech. I Had a Dream. It was more about America's a bad check, and with regards to those things I outlined. And the other thing was that Martin Luther King was a very strong individual to go through what he went through. He was in prison. He was jailed. His house was bombed 5 times. He was shot at. He was beaten. They don't even talk about that. They don't even discuss that. And we have to start discussing it. Those of us that know more are responsible, as Rashaki said, to do more. Even though, as Mshinda said, even the learned ones don't teach about it. You understand? Because they, for whatever reason, like you said, they preoccupied with their own goals and objectives. But and that's why character is very important. I was talking to my grandson the other day. I said, man, I'm glad you're getting A's, but I want you to get E's too, excellent behavior, and values. I said, most dangerous place is a school. I said, they vape, they got people that drinking, bringing liquor, got weapons and things of this nature. Schools are not safe, and you can't follow people. You stay away from those type of things. I have meetings with my grandchildren, once a month, every now and then. And I just talk values to them and ethics. And like Martin Luther King was a straight A student, but above all, he never sagged. He didn't have no pants hanging off him when he was in school, and he didn't have no scary curl or in those days Marcel's and Conks and stuff like that. You use him as a role model to emulate for young people, and tell them why they should emulate him. As far as his excellence in education and his excellence in being a outstanding young man that never was arrested as a youth. You understand? He got arrested. When he got arrested, it was for service, for standing up to change the society. See, they treat Martin Luther King, as Mshinda was saying, like a dreamer. Oh, no, everybody pull out their I Had a Dream speech. But we got to pull out some other ones. Like when he spoke to young people, he said, you got to get a blueprint for your life. You understand? And plan it. And just like building a house, you got to have a blueprint where you're going to be and things of this nature. And the mountaintop speech, you understand? The letters from the Birmingham jail, as Mshinda was bringing up. All of those things are interesting. He wrote 5 books. So that was very critical. But people, most people don't even have copies of his books. I have them somewhere around here. I should treasure them a little more, but I didn't skim through them because I didn't follow Martin Luther King when I was young because I wasn't into nonviolence. And I thought that and many Black people was calling him Uncle Tom, and all that stuff in the urban cities, many of them. And so, but as you get older and you do read about him, as I did, and you begin to watch his films and his commitment to human justice, you begin to admire and say that it takes more strength for him not to fight than it did to fight. You know what I'm saying? Like he said, the only time you look down on somebody is to lift them up. He said, the one thing you do with the enemy is turn them into a friend. And I said, wow, Then you begin to understand. See, it's like me and colleagues with Dr. Karenga. Most people don't like Dr. Karenga. A lot of people don't. because of what they call the UCLA shooting and the Panthers shootout. He wasn't even in town when they shot, when they had to shoot out in UCLA. And a girl, it wasn't over who philosophy, because they were working together with the Panthers. It was a dispute over a girl. And I found that out because I was at Long Beach State, and we had people, we had networks in the BSU, and they said, they just had a shootout at UCLA over this sister, and I said, oh, wow. And that was in 1968. And then when I met Jerron Jajaga, I spoke at St. Louis Obispo Men Colony. He was there, and I gave a speech, Black Devils in the, Black Gods in the Devil Warehouse, and and then when he got out, we sponsored him at Compton and Long Beach State, and so me and him had a talk. I always wondered why many of the Black Panthers didn't restart the organization, because it was so much inner conflict. And when I found out Eldridge Cleaver, his book Soul on Ice was dedicated to a white woman, and when Huey got out, he hung out with Jane Fonda in a hotel, penthouse, and then he started messing with Marlon Brando for money, and Eldridge Cleaver them was just trying to get money and stuff. I said, oh, wow. But the young people were dedicated. The young people were seriously committed. It's just like people were committed to Christianity, but the church, the ministers are crook. And until you study and find out background information, that don't mean you're a bad Christian because the minister's not following the book. And that don't mean the young people for the Panthers were bad because some of the leadership had different ideas of how to get money and do the organizations. Because I always went, why Bobby Seals and most people think Angela Davis was in the Black movement, but she wasn't. She was a socialist. That's why she never started a Black women's group. Now she's involved with a white woman, and I said, wow, people don't read, as Mshinda say, and study the movement. But anyway, getting back to Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was a role model for young people and for older people. He was a married man. He's committed to his family. And then, he didn't let Abernathy write a book called And the Walls Came Tumbling Down. Talking about Martin Luther King was with another woman, but I read the book. It's only one about 3 pages that Abernathy talk about him and King over this woman's house, and he was drinking. Martin Luther King didn't drink. Martin Luther King smoked. He was a smoker. He didn't like for people to see him, but he smoked cigarettes. And so he said that when I woke up, Martin Luther King was coming out the woman's bedroom, and so he just assumed that they were doing something. But for many of us, we in going with women, sometimes we just lay down and talk because they don't want to do nothing, and you don't want to get no rape case. So it's just a wasted night. But you don't do nothing. But anyway. That's the only thing that was in the book. It wasn't like Martin Luther King was going with this woman, she had invited him over for dinner or something, and after his speech. But anyway, it wasn't no graphic thing but the people who published the book made it look like it was a big thing. But anyway, he's married. He was a good person from that standpoint. But then he wanted to expand the movement from just civil rights into poverty and among Black people. And then he went into the Vietnam War. And so that's his vision of a new world. And so when we think of Martin Luther King, they don't never talk about him as an activist, a social activist, a social change agent for this society that liberalized it more than anybody. You wouldn't have integrated hotels today, integrated police departments, integrated thing. This didn't happen at the heads. Let me tell you. If it wasn't for our people struggling, we'd still be enslaved. It wasn't the Abraham Lincoln emancipation that set us free. It was our struggle. And that's what they were forced to, the 14th and 15th Amendment is what gave us our freedom, and not the Emancipation Proclamation. Matter of fact, I forget the author name, he wrote for Ebony. It's right. Lerone Bennett wrote Forced in the Hero or something like that. He wrote this book about Abraham Lincoln. He's the only author that ever wrote about a white president. And he talked about the racism that Lincoln had, and that he was forced into what he had to do. And that's what led to the Civil War. And that's why this girl Nikki Haley said, well, the Civil War was about freedom of people wanting to do right, and other people different of opinions about what was right, rather than saying that they would follow civil rights. Matter of fact, when we was in school, they said the civil rights was to save the Union, to keep the country together. They never said it was about what was causing them to be divided, which was slavery. And that meant that the Civil War, one of the biggest wars among white people, against white people, because everybody say white people so unified. More white people died in the Civil War than all the other wars put together. And so, it's just a beautiful thing once you get to studying King. And I began to admire the things that he did. Not just the speeches and things like that, the activism. To lead people and focus on young people. They said, we got to get young people involved because the old people lose their jobs if they go to jail. But young people just miss a few days of school. And that's why he began to mobilize young people. And that's where the Southern Christian Leadership Conference came in, and Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee with John Lewis. Matter of fact, they made John Lewis change his speech at the March on Washington, because he was finna go in there and really tear into the Kennedys and tear into the racism and Johnson at that time. It's just a beautiful thing, man. And once you study those things, as Mshinda was saying, but studying it and not putting it into practice is like reading the Bible and not practicing it. You got to practice. Prayer without practice is nothing. Without works. And so, therefore, the same thing with Martin Luther King. When you're dealing with him as a person of substance, why would we? Even Malcolm was a straight A student, in junior high and high school before he dropped out and started hustling. Matter of fact, both of them went to integrated schools, and they were elected student body president. Both of them. You got to read the autobiographies, and Haley's book and on Malcolm and things of this nature. But even if the kids don't read it, we should read it to them. Everybody's going, when your kids getting ready to go to sleep, read a chapter. Read so it'd be in their mind. But anyway, those are the things about Martin Luther King. Now, as far as celebrating his birthday, most people say service. Most people say, parades. Most people say, I remember we used to, in 1968 with Bishop Brookins, we had what they call sunrise service, where they brought sardines and crackers, because that's what Martin Luther King did the day before his martyrdom came about. He got up sunrise and they had some sardines and crackers, something like that. It's in the Sentinel back in those days. Me and I forget the brothers, man. We was demonstrating back there against gangs, against those things and violence in the community back then. Matter of fact, he's one of our first speakers at the Black Consciousness Conference before he passed. I'll get his article. And there was a picture of me and him leading a march in the front page of the state of the Sentinel back in the 60s and or early 70s. I can't remember, but it was that far back that we go back. I'm pretty sure it was in 70, 71. Man, his name, because Booker Griffin and all of them used to write for the Sentinel. Grandpa Jr. or somebody wrote sports and stuff. But anyway, we were demonstrating and marching for peace back in those days, man. Because I was with Young Men for Total Democracy, with Bob Simmons, Gary Alexander, and a bunch of other brothers out of Watts, and we were based in Watts, and we had the OIC building. We had help start one of the first Head Starts programs, and we also had what they call the Watts Coffee House. And then when they brought money in with the anti-poverty program, people went for the money. That's all it was. It was about money. Ted Watkins, they gave him a bunch of money to provide jobs. That's where WLC came from. We used to have Watts Manufacturing. They built parachutes for the military. Oh man, it was a different day in those days. But anyway, getting back to Martin Luther King, I learned to love and respect this brother. And I'm sorry for the loss of all his family members. His mother was shot in the church. And he was stabbed by this lady named Isola Rahh, I think her name. Isola Rahh, you can look it up. He was at a Harlem bookstore, I think around 1950 something. And she stabbed him with one of those. It wasn't a knife; it was something else, and it penetrated his chest so much. They said if he sneezed, he would have died. And but it was just a monumentous thing. This sister did that, I for years I thought it was in Chicago, but it was in Harlem. When I began to read about it, at the bookstore, a book signing. I think it was probably one of his book signings. And she stabbed me with a letter opener, I think it was, or something like that. But but getting back to his house being bombed 5 times, being in prison 7 to 8 times, jailed. I mean, most people would say, I quit, but he kept on moving on. So that's why I honor Martin Luther King, and I give praise for the civil rights and the integrationist movement because we benefited from it. Most people say, we need to do for self, but a part of being able to do for self is to get on your feet so that you can do for self. But anyway, those are the things I remember about him. And celebrating his birthday, you can read about him, as Mshinda said, and that was beautiful what Mshinda said. But we don't read enough about him. And like on his birthday, they are reading about him and celebrating his work. And recognize, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. There was over 250 stamps named in his honor worldwide, way before the United States made a stamp in his honor. Other countries was recognizing him from that standpoint, and like the Nobel Peace Prize, the parades all over the country today on this holiday weekend. Sometimes it's the 15th is on Monday, but it's generally the second week in the month of January, that the second week that they celebrated. Because sometimes his birthday is not on the Monday, but it's that second Monday and that's why they changed what used to be Washington birthday and Lincoln birthday to President's Day and put them all together. But anyway, it's a beautiful thing. Any response? before Rashiki closes out?
Yeah, I just want to say, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Rashiki?
I just was going to read a few more of the quotes. Go ahead, Brother Mshinda.
Oh, I was just gonna say, you know, kind of, you know, reiterating about, um, you know, the attack, the what's going on in the world, as it relates to Black history, our history, world history, and these school systems. You know, it's part of the what I was talking about. People are sound asleep, and you don't, hear a lot of people in family households and in the community discussing, what's happening. I mean, I'm sure it's going on as far as in some households and some communities, but the elimination of what's being taught as relates to, you know, our contributions on the world front. Um, and so, um, it's pertinent to what we're talking about, getting that information out there as it relates to MLK or Malcolm, or and just to name those two. Of course, there are many, many more. Um, we can, but those are two famous ones that we can just highlight. That's trying to, they're on the verge of being eliminated or being reconstructed on how history is being delivered in school systems. On a positive, to end on a positive note, there's a school system in the state of Missouri, one of the more prominent, well, I don't know about prominent, but as far as test scores and stuff like that. And so one of your high level school districts, as it relates to standardized tests and all the other measurements as they, uh, how they measure people, has nothing to do with intelligence or the potential of intelligence. But at the end of the day, look up Francis Howell School District. That's in the St. Louis area. It's in St. Charles County. I've been having a conversation with I got people in St. Louis that I know, and I know a retired principal there. And he actually gave me a call, after I put him on point about what was going on in his neck of the woods. He's familiar with the school district, but it was unbeknownst to him what was actually going on as it relates to the elimination of the African Black experience. And so therefore, he called me up and said that he said he mentioned that they're in the news down there, and he mentioned something. So anyway, I went on YouTube and I just typed in Francis House School District. It is predominantly white. They have blacks there as well. But anyway, long story short, it's like it's backfiring on them. They have these so-called intelligent students. These kids that they're teaching to read and write at a high proficiency, and they're actually supporting Black history. And you see the white folks out there, the little kids that are standing up to the school board, which is a predominantly white male school board, have I think a couple of white women, no blacks, and they're standing up saying, "This is our history." These are white folks, and this is our history. And I was not taken aback, but I applauded it. Where, we're living, so it's part of that same culture, that same generation that we're living in. As the ones that are conscious, those are the ones that's going to take the ball, to the across the 50-yard line. Those are the ones that are going to keep the fight going on. I don't care what they look like, as long as you're standing up speaking truth. I'm down with you. That kind of thing. We know historically, there have been many of the white folk been against us and don't want to live by us and want us to be off the planet. But these youngsters, It's a different generation out there. It's a whole different thing going on. And the ones that can actually get it, those are the ones that are dangerous to the ones that are evil. And so anyway, again, you have the one, they've created a monster in their school. They've taught them how to read proficiently and all that. You should hear them speaking. They get up there and they blast the school board, and they're looking simple minded. You know, they like, damn, we didn't know that after we canceled the school, the Black History, they had to reinstate it. There was so much outcry. Francis Howe School District, Missouri, in St. Charles County, Missouri. Very interesting, you know. So again, it's important to keep the history going in the schools.
Okay, that's beautiful. Yeah, but you know, the whites have always participated in the civil rights movement, and some in other movements also. You know, going back to Mississippi when the 3 civil rights workers was killed, 2 of them was white. Goodman and Swigner, something like that. But the point is that, you know, there was many whites that went down to register blacks for voter registration. They were part of the SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. But then when Stokely Carmichael took over and the Black Power movement came, they made the whites encouraged the whites to go work in their own community. But we've always had whites that worked with Black people, and then moving from abolitionists to status, you know, Stevens in the Senate. He got beat down with a cane by a segregationist and an enslaver. And when they were in the United States Senate back in the 1800s. And it's a thing, brother. So yeah, I'm not surprised that some white progressiveness, and even into jail, you know, white women become and some white men to poor Black women, take them and you know, take care of them, you know, and the same thing with cats in jail. They get pen pals from white girls, and when they get out, they go and be with that white woman, you know. She put money on their books, but, you know, she falls in love with them, and, you know, it'd be that way, you know. But the institutions are still the same. You can change people's hearts, and you can change people's behavior. They can change their own behavior and attitude. You know, that's what Guess Who's Coming to Dinner was all about, you know. But it's the institutions that they build and the apparatus that uphold those institutions, like the military complex and the laws that they make, and the enforcement of those laws, from miscegenation laws against segregation. Even though some people violate it, even the people that made the laws violated. That's why you have so many different colors in the Black community. You know, white people, I mean, you have mixed marriages, even though you can pass a law. You pick out a law against dope, selling dope, people still sell dope. You pass a law against people having sex, interracial sex. That's why when Clarence Thomas, he talked about rolling back same-sex marriages and abortion, but he never said interracial marriages are bad because he's in one, you know. So he never put that up there. But the point is that you're right, Mshinda. There are some progressive white people throughout history. We've worked with them and have allies with them. You know, the Weather Underground and a few other radical groups. The socialist groups have always recruited Blacks. Tifa, you know, there's Black and whites in that too also. Go ahead,
Let me say this though. Like I say, in this area, this is traditional right wing conservative, you know, type of situation going on. And this is their offspring. These are the kids that are being brought up.
Rebelling against their parents.
They're rebelling against not just their parents, but to the BS in society. Period. So it's not just a few whites that are leaving their community to go fight for the cause. This is right in their community where, and you should see these folks looking stupid, like it backfired on them. So I'm just speaking on the generational shift. It's we living in a time where, things are revealing itself, and you got some people that are conscious, but this is an area where they're gonna vote for Trump, but the kids, they're speaking against, so in other words, there is there's a lot of hope in those areas, and not just hope, but just it's going to go down regardless. Truth is going to prevail regardless, and that's what's happening. We're living in a transition.
Okay, that's a good position. Rashiki, you want to
Yeah,
share some?
I wanted to just share a few more quotes.
Okay.
Here's one. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. Whatever you do,
Move forward.
you have to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. And I can relate to this because I was telling my daughters, one of my daughters, she was having a tough time, in school, well, doing an assignment. And I was talking to her, trying, giving her encouragement. I said, now this is the time when you come to that point, when you're doing an assignment and it start getting challenging and tough. I say, this is the time you work through it and get tougher than that. I said, you have to work, you have to even go deeper and work harder. And I think she took that to heart because she wound up graduating from college with a 3.7 GPA. And this was at a UC day at UC Davis. So I could relate to King and how he just had that, he had the it factor, you know, of how we should be as people. Now I'll read this last one because I didn't see it, but I'm gonna read it. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. So again, we he's taken he's taken it to a higher level of thinking and consciousness when you could look at this bad situation and then turn it around. And he's just a phenomenal individual. I truly love the way he did, how he lived his life and how he's an example of how we should be. That's our living Jesus type figure, you know. So excellent individual.
Uh-huh. All right. So what we got on Monday, tomorrow?
Tomorrow we got Noble Carlos on. Let me share the screen again. Noble Carlos is coming on. Young brother. Here it is. Self-responsible code is the topic. He's an extraordinary young man, enterprising young man, 22 years old, doing a lot in his young life. And he's going to tell us more about it. He was on the show before, but he was in travel mode. So now we'll be able to get him just sitting still. So it'll be a real good show. Anything coming for Monday? I mean, Tuesday, Professor Rahh?
I'll get back with you. I'm trying to get Emma Sharif,
Okay.
the mayor of Compton, to come on.
I hope we can get her on.
All right then.
All right, each one teach one in Conscious Corner.
All
We'll
right.
take our pause.